How's it going, class? Professor V here. You have probably heard, but there's been some very big news today. It's not often that on a Sunday afternoon you get news as big as what we got today, and that is that President Biden announced that he is not going to run for re-election and that he does not want to be the nominee for the Democratic Party. He may want to be, but that he's passing the torch to Vice President Kamala Harris. A couple things I wanted to note about this. First of all, it's fascinating that this is happening considering just a few days ago we were talking in our classes just now about the possibility of Biden dropping out. And it seems that the pressure mounting among Democrats became so intense that Biden, my understanding is he probably made a calculation that from the Democratic point of view, if he were to step down now and Kamala Harris were to win, he would be seen as a hero for democracy. And in the Democratic Party, he would be, regardless of anything else he did or didn't do, he'd go down as sort of the Ronald Reagan of the party. If you don't know that reference, Republicans often count Ronald Reagan among their favorite or best presidents, and of course he was a Republican for 8 years. So Biden has done many things by dropping out, and the first thing he's done that I wanted to mention that isn't really being covered in the news yet, but I think is going to be very significant, which is there is a possibility, there's a very high possibility that the Republican Party in perhaps every state, but certainly in the swing states that are going to be close and are historically close, those states shift over many years. Remember, we call them purple states because red is Republican dominated, blue is Democrat nominated. So a purple state would be a state that's close, 50-50, 48, 52%, somewhere in that range. And then we have another term for that. It's the same thing. It's called a swing state. So for those swing states, in this case, it looks to be states such as, but not limited to, Arizona, Georgia, Florida, probably not, but maybe North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. There are a few more, but those states, if one candidate, if Kamala Harris is indeed the one on the ballot, which I would almost guarantee she will be, and I'll explain why in a minute. If that's the case, whoever wins those, if someone were to win, Trump or Kamala Harris were to win all of those swing states, they would be president almost for sure, because states like California, Biden won by over 6 million votes, and then states like Mississippi, Trump got almost 70% of the vote. So there's most of the states that we're not talking about are the ones where the margin of error is just impossible, even within a 5% polling plus or minus. So let's say a poll says in Mississippi that Trump has 55% support, and Kamala Harris has 45. Realistically, it'd actually probably be more like 65% to 35%, even with a margin of error of 5%. And you took away 5% from Trump out of that math and gave it to Kamala Harris, it's still a blowout, and vice versa for California. So those swing states are key, and here's what Republicans, I predict, are going to do. And I'm not predicting it just based on my own thoughts, but based on some of the things that I've heard from congressmen and others in the Republican Party, which is they're going to make every effort possible to challenge the legitimacy, and at least try to make it perhaps seem illegitimate. I would argue potentially this is something that could happen, but let's just give you their argument first, and then we can give the other side of it. So Republicans are going to say, well, every state has their own election laws, and that is true to the extent that the Electoral College gives all 50 states their own separate elections, and then we add it up as we learned last few lectures. But what's especially interesting is that if Republicans were able to succeed in essentially not disqualifying Kamala Harris from the ballot in even one or two swing states, that could tilt the election. This is an unprecedented time. And so the good news is, from the Democrats' point of view, so that's the Republicans' point of view, the good news for them is that they believe they'll be able to challenge at least one or two swing states, almost even one, but two or three, to be able to have the state legislatures, or in every state it's different, but the attorney general, state attorney generals, the election commissioners, to not allow her to be at the top of the ticket. Now, for Democrats, the good news is she already is going to be on the ballot with Joe Biden. It's kind of already done deal. Of course, the ballots haven't all been nailed out yet and such, but her name is on there, so it wouldn't be. I don't think there's any legal precedent that would support the Republicans' idea of trying to disqualify her because the timing is late. I also think that if that were to happen, it could create a real problem in just as a neutral, by looking at the fact that it's going to look and appear that Republicans, if they succeed in disqualifying Kamala Harris from even one or two swing states, it's going to appear, and may very well be the case, that they're sort of meddling with the Electoral College before it's even had a chance to go forward. The second development would be that I think is very fascinating. So remember, we learned that the president is the first in power, vice president second, and then the Speaker of the House of Representatives is third. Now, the Speaker of the House of Representatives at this moment is a Republican, and that third person in line, the House Speaker Johnson, he has now just today called on Joe Biden to resign now, not to bow out on January 20th and let whoever wins, Kamala Harris or Trump, be the next president. Mike Johnson says, I want Speaker of the House. He's third in line to the presidency. He said Biden should drop out immediately. And I'll give you his side, and then I'll give you at least out loud, the side that he says out loud. The side that he says out loud is, well, essentially, Biden is admitting that he's not mentally able to continue on, so he should leave right now. But there's something that's really a little tricky about that logic that isn't being said out loud, that I would guarantee is part of the political calculus of asking him to do that. And here's what it is. Remember last class we learned about January 6th, that the vice president certifies the election. And so stay with the logic that Speaker Johnson surely has when he asks this Biden drop out now. He would then, if Biden dropped out today, not January 20th and let Kamala Harris or Donald Trump win the election, but if he dropped out right now and actually resigned from the presidency, that would mean Kamala Harris would instantly come president right now. Like there'd be a swearing in, essentially. And then he would become vice president. So it's possible, let's just say that Biden says, okay, I'll do what you say, Mike Johnson. This in a million years would never, ever happen. If it does, I'll pay you each $1 million every day for the rest of your lives. That's all sure. But if Biden is intentionally and unless there's something horrible, a tragedy of a passing away. But beyond that, there's zero chance that Biden is going to step down and actually physically stop being president now. And the reason is really simple. Because then, even though it would immediately make Kamala Harris president, it would make Mike Johnson vice president. And then you might say, well, who cares? Why is that significant? Because then Kamala Harris wins. Well, she only wins for 3 months until the election, right? So then in November, so that doesn't guarantee a new 4 years. But here's what it would guarantee: that a Republican who is committed to Trump about as much as you can be, and hasn't publicly condemned January 6th in the sense of it being an illegitimate or unconstitutional thing to try to, Mike have Mike Pence, the vice president, not certify the election. Mike Johnson, if he's vice president and Kamala Harris wins, he's now vice president. Say 3 months from now, 4 months from now, 5 months from now. Now it's January 6th again, and he's vice president. He's a Republican. And let's say Trump loses. We just talked about this. What happened 4 years ago on January 6th when Trump lost? And I think history will record this. I don't think this is partisan. The fact is that he told people to fight like blank, and I don't want to say the word because I don't like to swear. Fight like blank, or we won't have a country left to fight. And then he told his crowd to march down to the Capitol. And then when 5 police officers died, 4 by suicide, 5 other people in the building, Trump sat for 187 minutes and watched people getting killed and people getting attacked because they were doing what he said. They all had Trump flags. They were bashing in windows. They were going into the Capitol building. They brought a noose to hang the vice president of the United States, who was Trump's own vice president, was about to be hung. Trump's own vice president, the guy closest, that would be like Biden trying to have Kamala Harris hung almost. Now you might say that's not fair, Professor V. Trump wasn't asking them to go hang him. Well, that's true. He didn't say that explicitly, obviously. No one would probably say that out loud. But the fact is that he saw noose and gallows on the TV, and they heard the people that he sent down there chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," and he didn't do anything. In fact, he kept tweeting, and the people that follow him, his supporters, with the Trump flags and so forth, one of them took a megaphone and with the loudest possible microphone volume read the Twitter feeds live from what Trump was saying about Mike Pence. He's saying Mike Pence doesn't have the courage to not certify the election. And then afterwards, if you don't really know about this that much, the question that I think is going to go down in history is a very important question about how Trump answered it. The question was simple, by a journalist on Fox News. Former President Trump, people were yelling and chanting to hang your vice president. What do you make of that? And instead of saying that's unacceptable, we don't ever want political violence in the United States, it's a pretty easy question to say, I don't think hanging a vice president is okay. But that's not what he said. What he said was, well, they were really mad at him. So now I ask you this question to think about. Is it possible that this election could end up actually having another circumstance? So in other words, we have now, this is the most fascinating, there's a lot of adjectives I could use, nerve-wracking, wild. It's just a summer of politics that has never happened. First, you have a debate where I think an objective observer would say Biden didn't do well in the debate in terms of presentation. And you might say, well, who cares? If people agree with his policies and he's a nicer guy than Trump, then why wouldn't they vote for him? Well, there's a famous study that showed Richard Nixon, who I'm sure you know, former president, and then the presidential candidate who beat him the first time, JFK, also the last president to be assassinated and killed. In that debate, before either of them were president, it was one of the first televised debates. And Kennedy was seen as being younger, maybe more suave or something. And as some of this is subjective, it's based on public relations and image and how people view things. But that's important in politics. Whether or not it should be is a different question. But Nixon refused to put makeup on. For whatever reason, he just didn't feel like it. And it appeared to the viewers that watching the debate, when about 3,000 or so were polled, they watched the debate. Who do you think won the debate? And overwhelmingly, the people that watched it on TV with a younger JFK and a Nixon that was older with no makeup on, overwhelmingly the audience said that they believed that JFK won. The exact same amount of people were asked to listen to the debate on the radio and not see it at all. Just listen to every word at the exact same moment in different places, but it's doing the exact same words coming out of their mouths. And then in that poll, overwhelmingly, the people that would listen to it on the radio thought Nixon won. So why is this important? That's fascinating, and it tells a story. That is essentially why Biden dropped out, because I think I've heard Democrats in Congress say something like there wasn't an amount of makeup that could make up for Biden's performance in the debate. And again, it's not about what his policies were; it's about that perception. It's not that JFK Nixon example is a fascinating one to reference. So now we fast forward to Trump having a thankfully failed assassination attempt. And again, we've said this a million times, there's zero place for violence in the country. It doesn't matter if you don't like someone. There's ways to dialogue, and you can vote, and we can be peaceful and have differences and respect each other. So that part is a shocking development. And then Biden, under pressure from Democrats, who are loudly now saying over and over, as we were saying more and more, he can't beat Trump in the fall. And it's that Nixon versus JFK problem, if you will, like the image problem. The debate really cemented that in people's minds. And so now here we are. Kamala Harris is the presumptive nominee. I don't know yet who the vice presidential ticket will be with her. This is an unprecedented thing, but I can just guarantee you that if Kamala Harris does win, and she and whoever she picks for vice president, or whoever the Democratic Party picks, if she wins, there will almost certainly, if I just looking at history, if I look at history, there's almost no way this won't happen. And what is sure to happen, in other words, is that there's going to be people who say the election isn't fair, it is fraudulent because she came on the ballot too late. So let's just say Kamala Harris wins legitimately. She wins legitimately. And any sober, objective observer knows that she won fair and square. We've seen what happened on January 6th. Biden won fair and square in 2020, and on January 6th, Trump's words and actions got 10 people killed. So I don't know how much different the situation is now, but if Kamala Harris wins, would there not be a similar challenge to the January 6th, the certifying? Now, what I pray and hope is that there would be no violence. People are welcome to protest peacefully as much as they want. And then on the other side, if you're a Republican, you're thinking all of the uncertainty is good for the Republican Party. It's helping Trump because first you have Biden, who had a shaky performance. Then you have Democrats coming out saying he's just not going to be able to beat Trump. Then he steps down, and now Kamala Harris has only about 3 months till election time to introduce herself to the American people as President Trump's opponent on the big stage. This is a fascinating time. Just wanted to fill you all in, and what I would love to hear are your comments, your thoughts, your insights, and think about it like this. If you're, let's say you're a Trump supporter, what's the good news and bad news about this for you? I will tell you that Trump supporters largely would have rather faced Biden. They thought their odds were better. In that similar way, I'll tell you an interesting story quickly. In 2008, when Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton were running for the Democratic nomination, there were a lot of Republicans who saw that Obama had a lot of mass appeal to independent voters. So there were voters in states where there was a Democratic dominated state. What they did was, and you are allowed to do this, it's called strategic primary voting. There were a lot of Republicans who signed up as Democrats for the primary election, which is where you choose the nominee. And in that primary election, they voted for Hillary Clinton. They didn't like Hillary Clinton, and then once the election came, they were going to vote for McCain regardless. So why would they register as Democrat instead of just voting for McCain to be their nominee? Well, they registered as Democrats so that they could strategically vote for what they thought was the weaker candidate. Does that make sense? So if in 2008, that was seen to be Hillary Clinton, but now in 2024, it is seen by the same party and probably also Republicans. It's seen to be that Kamala Harris is the stronger candidate and Biden is the weaker one. So I'll leave it there for now, but that's just something to think about. I'd love to hear your thoughts. This is going to be a fascinating ride. I hope it is safe, fun, and exciting, and that it all works out for the best for everybody in the U.S. and in the world. So God bless. Adios. See you soon. Professor B for now, signing off.